Welcome to A News. I'm Leila Masimova. Here are the top stories for today. U.S. President Donald Trump has ordered reciprocal tariffs targeting countries that tax U.S. imports. The Munich Security Conference kicks off amid tensions. Marco Rubio's flight to Munich forced to turn back, delaying key meetings. U.S. President Donald Trump has ordered reciprocal tariffs targeting countries that tax U.S. imports. The move risks a trade war with China and Europe and could disrupt global markets. Let's see how tariffs actually work.
The golden age of America begins right now.
U.S. President Donald Trump is bringing tariffs back big time. He has proposed imposing 60% tariffs on all Chinese goods and 10-20% tariffs on imports from other countries, including those from Europe. It's a full-scale rewrite of global trades, and if history tells us anything, it won't just hit China. It could ignite another trade war with Europe.
Every country will be reciprocal. It won't affect everybody because there's some where we have similar tariffs. But the ones that are taking advantage of the United States, we're going to have it's reciprocity, it's reciprocal. We're going to have a reciprocal tariff. But the tariffs are going to make us very rich and very strong, and we're going to treat other countries very fairly. But if you think about it, other countries charge us tariffs. We don't charge them tariffs, and it's about time that changed.
But this isn't the first time tariffs have reshaped entire industries. To understand what could happen next, we need to look back to the 1960s, to a time when the United States and Europe fought over something a lot smaller than semiconductors or electric vehicles. They fought over chicken. In post-war Europe, American chicken was booming. By 1962, U.S. poultry exports to Europe had surged to $76 million, equivalent to over $700 million today. European farmers weren't happy. They saw cheap U.S. chicken flooding their markets. So, West Germany and France imposed tariffs. Price jumped, imports collapsed. Washington was furious. But instead of just retaliating against European chicken, the US imposed a 25% tariff on light trucks, which still exists today. Germany's Volkswagen was hit hard. Its truck sales in the US fell by half, and the company never really recovered in that market. Meanwhile, Germans paid more for chicken, and Americans had fewer truck options. It was a textbook example of how tariffs work. They protect some industries while hurting others. And 60 years later, that 25% truck tariff, it's still here. A short-term trade dispute became permanent policy. And that is the thing about tariffs. They are easy to start, hard to undo. Now, Trump is launching a new tariff war, and this time it's bigger than chicken. His new plan could hit everything from European steel to pharmaceuticals. Back in 2018, Trump's steel and aluminium tariffs led to full-scale retaliation from the EU. Europe imposed tariffs on Harley-Davidson, bourbon, and orange juice. Now, the stakes are even higher. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen condemned Trump's proposed tariffs as unjustified and warned that they will not go unanswered.
And against the backdrop that we know that there is a lot at stake, we discussed ways to strengthen a very pragmatic cooperation with the United States. There are clearly new challenges and growing uncertainties, so the European Union is prepared for a robust but constructive dialogue with the United States. When targeted, unfairly or arbitrarily, the European Union will respond firmly. This weekend, we witnessed how steep tariffs were imposed on Canada and Mexico. Those tariffs raise business costs, they harm workers and consumers, they create unnecessary economic disruption and drive inflation. We do not see much good coming out of this. So we prioritize productive discussions and engage early. At the same time, the European Union remains also steadfast in its multilateral commitments, be it from our development aid to our climate targets.
If Donald Trump's tariffs trigger a trade war, what happens next? If Trump's tariffs move forward, some industries will benefit, especially in steel, aluminium, and domestic manufacturing. US manufacturers may gain short term, but costs often pass to consumers. Auto prices could rise as the industry depends on foreign parts. Retaliatory tariffs may hit US exports, lowering global demand. This isn't just about trade, it's about a shift in US economic policy. For decades, free trade drove global growth. Now, economic nationalism is back. The chicken war was a small dispute that reshaped industries for decades. Trump's tariffs could redraw the global economic map, and once that shift begins, there is no turning back.
US President Donald Trump and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi met at the White House, announcing key agreements on trade, defense and counterterrorism. The talks come as both countries seek to balance economic ties and security cooperation in the Indo-Pacific.
US President Donald Trump and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi reaffirmed their commitment to strengthening economic and security partnerships. At a meeting at the White House, Modi announced a goal to double bilateral trade to $500 billion by 2030. Donald Trump pushed to reduce the US trade deficit with India. The agreement comes after Trump unveiled a roadmap of reciprocal tariffs for every country that puts duties on US imports.
Today, the U.S. trade deficit with India is almost $100 billion. And Prime Minister Modi and I have agreed that we'll begin negotiations to address the long-running disparities. We can make up the difference very easily with the deficit, with the sale of oil and gas.
The US will increase military sales to India starting in 2025. Trump confirmed that India will receive F-35 fighter jets, a move seen as a counterbalance to Chinese growing military influence. The leaders also addressed security concerns, with counterterrorism a key focus. Trump confirmed that the US will extradite a suspect linked to the 2008 Mumbai attacks.
Today, I'm pleased to announce that my administration has approved the extradition of one of the plotters and one of the very evil people of the world, and having to do with the horrific 2008 Mumbai terrorist attack, to face justice in India.
We stand strongly together in the fight against terrorism. That criminal is now going to be handed over to India, and appropriate action will be taken.
Beyond trade and security, discussions covered tariffs, energy exports, and strategic cooperation in the Indo-Pacific. Trump reiterated that India is set to become a key buyer of US liquefied natural gas and nuclear technology.
The Prime Minister and I also reached an important agreement on energy that will restore the United States as a leading supplier of oil and gas to India.
Both countries will now move forward with negotiations on a formal trade deal, while defense and energy agreements set to take effect in the coming years.
Several winter storms swept across major Canadian cities on Saturday, causing significant disruptions. Ottawa has experienced its heaviest snowstorm since 2022, with 32 centimeters. Toronto saw 20 centimeters, leading to school closures. The city is expected to face more winter weather through the week, with temperatures dropping below freezing. Meanwhile, the Environmental and Climate Change Canada warns of another storm expected this weekend. U.S. President Donald Trump administration moves to downsize the federal government, with Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency leading the charge. As the first major target was USAID, the administration says billions in taxpayer dollars have been funneled into political projects overseas, and now they are pulling back the curtain on where the money was been going. Our Obeisha Bandar from Washington, D.C. has more on that.
President Trump on Tuesday signed an executive order directing federal agencies to coordinate with Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, to shrink the size of the federal workforce. That effort has already brought down one government agency, the U.S. Agency for International Development, or USAID, getting rid of most of its 10,000 employees worldwide. Trump administration officials have said that for decades, USAID bureaucrats believed that they were accountable to no one. But now, that era seems to be coming to a close. Critics of USAID say that its multi-billion-dollar budget was especially insidious in the overseas programs that the agency promoted. Such programs doled out millions of dollars in grants, ostensibly to promote democracy, but at a closer inspection were found to instead promote far-left political agendas and other radical ideologies, according to critics. It wasn't until Elon Musk and his team started taking a closer look at just where the money was going that these programs for the first time received such extensive scrutiny. The Trump administration believes that a significant portion of these funds were distributed in the form of political patronage to so-called non-governmental organizations that sought to impose their own narrow worldview. Instead of advancing American interests, USAID funding was found by DOGE to flow to left-wing media organizations in Latin America and media programs in Eastern Europe designed in many cases to undermine conservative governments. Supporters of USAID claim that they were merely supporting journalism. But a survey of where the funds were going, according to analysts, indicate that USAID programs were selective in supporting individuals and programs from specific political ideologies. And these programs weren't just being funded abroad, according to a recently revealed DOGE investigation. The U.S. Department of Defense is alleged to have paid the media agency Reuters up to $9 million for what they called social engineering programs between 2018 and 2022. The White House and DOGE have publicized the extensive list of programs that were receiving millions of dollars of grants. The funding included $7.9 million to teach journalists in Sri Lanka how to avoid, quote, binary gendered language. Over $4.5 million went to, quote, combat disinformation in Kazakhstan. $6 million to transform digital spaces to reflect, quote, feminist democratic principles. $20 million for a group related to a key player in the Russiagate impeachment probe, which was ultimately totally discredited. And $3.9 million for, quote, LGBT causes in the Western Balkans. The Trump administration say that they are publishing the receipts of all the spending to highlight what they say is a network of fraud and waste. And they also say that it's time to rein in such wasteful spending that in many cases undermine American partners around the world. So clearly here, the Trump administration working very closely with Elon and his DOGE team to end such programs and to focus more on an America first foreign policy. I'm Ubeisha Bandar reporting for A News in Washington, D.C.
Freezing the U.S. aid can also impact some small European media, including ones in Hungary. Public Guterres reports from Budapest.
Journalists at Club Radio are feeling the impact of the recent decision to freeze aid. The station was set to receive U.S. funds for new equipment and an expanded second studio. But those plans are now on hold after President Trump's administration stopped those grants. The station relies on a single broadcasting studio. If it fails to operate for some reason, it will go silent. The station depends heavily on public donations, but losing foreign grants tariffs complicates its future. The freeze affects more than just club radio here in Hungary. At the investigative outlet Atlazzo, editors are currently discussing how to fill a funding gap left by U.S. aid cuts. The managing editor said to local media that the outlet lost up to 15% of its budget with the freeze, forcing it to seek new donors and boost crowdfunding. USAID launched its Central European Media Initiative in 2022, aiming to support democracy and independent journalism. But Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orban, a Trump ally, has long opposed foreign-backed media. Days after the aid freeze, he renewed calls to eliminate foreign-funded organizations critical of his government. Media watchdogs warn that this could deepen what they say is a crisis in Hungary's press freedom. They say over 14 years, Viktor's government has consolidated control over state media and pressured private outlets. Critics say losing U.S. funding could lead to fewer investigative reports and more censorship. Meanwhile, the European Federation of Journalists has urged EU institutions to step in, warning that the USAID freeze disrupts media across 30 countries. Without new sources of support, independent journalism in Hungary faces an uncertain future. Pablo Gutierrez for A News in Budapest, Hungary.
President Donald Trump says high-level officials from US, Russia and Ukraine will meet at the Munich Security Conference later today. Trump says that Ukraine would be involved in peace talks with Russia. However, Ukrainian officials, including advisor Dmytro Litvin, deny reports of Ukraine's participation in joint talks with Moscow. Litvin says that Ukraine requires a unified position with US and Europe before engaging in talks with the Kremlin. He also added that no discussions are planned for the conference at this time. Around 5,000 police officers have been deployed to the Bavarian capital ahead of the start of the Munich Security Conference. Key leaders and officials will be attending, including US Vice President J.D. Vance and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. The event comes after a day a car plowed into a crowd in the city, leaving dozens injured.
High-profile officials will be descending on Munich for the security conference, which begins today at the Bavarian capital in Germany. US Vice President J.D. Vance and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky are expected to be attending. The event comes a day after a car plowed into a crowd on Thursday, leaving 28 people injured. The driver was identified as a 24-year-old Afghan asylum seeker.
We have very, very high safety standards. As far as the protection of the Munich Security Conference is concerned, we are deploying 5,000 officers to make Munich safe. The participants of demonstrations taking place here will be protected. That's why we have so many officers on duty. There is no such thing as 100% protection.
This year's meeting follows a phone call between US President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin about stopping the war in Ukraine. Trump says that Ukraine would not be able to reclaim all its territory or join NATO. However, Kyiv says it doesn't expect to hold talks with the Russian side at the annual event. Zelensky believes the US, Europe and Ukraine need a common position before talks with Moscow.
The plane carrying US Secretary of State Marco Rubio was forced to turn back to Washington late Thursday due to a mechanical issue. He was en route to the Munich Security Conference. The issue was identified as a cracked windshield in the cockpit and happened about 90 minutes after takeoff from Joint Base Andrews. Rubio plans to continue his trip to Germany and the Middle East on separate aircraft. The delay was raised questions about whether he will make a scheduled meeting with Vice President James David Vance and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky on Friday. A fire at a construction site at the port city of Southern Korea has claimed the lives of at least 6 people, according to local fire officials. Around 100 people were evacuated from the area in Busan and 7 people were injured, according to local reports. There are concerns there will be more casualties. South Korea's acting President Choi Sang-mok says he's deployed all available resources to put out the blaze. 5 people have died after a bus accident in Turkey, Bingöl province. More than 30 others are injured, according to local authorities. The incident happened when the vehicle was traveling toward Erzurum and veered off the Bingöl-Diyarbakır highway near Doğança village and overturned into a ditch.
A bus carrying 44 people veered off the road in Turkey's Bingöl province, approximately 8 kilometers from the Genç district, killing at least 5 people and injuring dozens. Governor Ahmet Hamdi Usta, speaking at the accident site, said that the vehicle was en route to Erzurum and lost control due to severe ice on the road and veered into a ditch. Emergency services, including 112 emergency health teams, the Disaster and Emergency Management Presidency, the National Medical Rescue Team and gendarmerie units responded promptly to the scene. All injured individuals were transported to nearby hospitals for treatment. Initial reports point to icy road conditions as a key factor to the cause of the accident. In response, officials have increased monitoring of the Bingöl-Diyarbakır highway to assess road safety and prevent similar incidents.
Turkey is set to receive 1.3 billion cubic meters of natural gas from Turkmenistan through a swap deal with Iran starting in March and continuing until the end of the year. This according to Energy Minister Alparslan Bayraktar.
Energy Minister Alparslan Bayraktar said that 1.3 billion cubic meters of natural gas from Turkmenistan will be sent to Iran and then transported to Turkey's Gürbülak entry point through the Iran-Turkey natural gas pipeline. Bayraktar's remarks followed his announcement on February 11th regarding the Turkey-Turkmenistan agreement to start the Turkmen gas supply on March 1st.
Turkmenistan stands out as a major producer and supplier of natural gas, delivering its resources to Turkey and, more importantly, transporting them onward to Europe, where demand continues to grow, is of strategic significance. While our infrastructure is prepared, a critical challenge persists, resolving the legal status and transit issues of the Caspian Sea. Establishing a pipeline across the Caspian would enable the transportation of significantly larger volumes of gas to both Turkey and Europe. Achieving this goal remains our primary objective.
Commenting on potential new deals with other countries, Bayraktar said that Turkey is currently working on various projects regarding both import and export. He emphasized ongoing initiatives to broaden the country's gas export capabilities, while simultaneously working to diversify its energy sources.
Bolivia is launching a long-awaited steel plant backed by Chinese investment to reduce reliance on imports. The Muton facility will begin operations this month, marking a major step in the country's industrial expansion.
A China-funded steel plant in Bolivia that was first proposed 50 years ago is set to begin production this month. The move marks a major step in the country's industrialization efforts. The Export-Import Bank of China is funding the $546 million Muton plant. It'll be operated by China's Sino Steel Engineering and Technology for its first year. Located near the Brazilian border, the facility is expected to produce 200,000 metric tons of steel annually, including rebar and wire mesh, valued at $260 million. Bolivia currently imports steel from Peru and Brazil, but the plant's output will cover half of domestic demand. Officials say the project is a major turning point.
We are going to cover the domestic market. We are going to cover 50%. When we cover 100%, we will build another plant, much better than the current one. With that plant, we will cover 100%. And with the surplus, we can export.
Con esa planta cubrimos al 100%.
It's set to process 66,000 tons of raw materials monthly, using iron ore from a deposit that Bolivian officials say holds one of the world's biggest iron ore reserves with 40 billion tons. This plant is expected to create 700 jobs initially, expanding to 1,000. Officials may build a second plant once domestic needs are met, though no timeline has been given.
Europe's tallest volcano, Mount Etna, put on a show with plumes of smoke rising from its summit and lava flowing from its crater, as Sicily is recording ongoing seismic activity with several earthquakes.
Standing at more than 3,000 meters over the Sicilian landscape in Italy, Europe's tallest and most active volcano released a massive eruption of lava, fire, and gas high into the air on Wednesday morning. At 10:30 a.m. local time, lava started seeping from a crack on the southern slope of the crater called Bocca Nova, which means new mouth. No sign of changes were recorded in the volcano's perimeters, according to experts. Italian media reported there were no alarm alerts, with authorities tracking the situation. In 2013, UNESCO added the volcano as a World Heritage Site, recognizing its strategic geological location and its impact on the local culture and economy.
That's all for now, but don't go anywhere. Stay tuned to A News for more exclusive updates. We'll be back soon.